Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be a battle report video on the third and the fourth game of the ETC for me on day 2. So the first team that we were paired up for this day was Team Switzerland, and I got to play against Infernal Dwarfs. So I think they believed that this was quite a good matchup, maybe because Infernal Dwarfs is quite good in anti-armor. And I was like, well, this is not the best matchup because the 5 Toruk Anointed with great weapons, they will definitely kill a unit of Knights of the Sun Griffin if they get the chance. So my priority in this matchup was to make sure that they wouldn't really do a lot. So let's go into the deployment. We played Refused Flank and we played objective-wise. I believe it was Breakthrough. So you have to get a scoring unit into the deployment zone of your opponent. We were trading some drops. I started with some Knights of the Sun Griffin in the middle, basically, some heavy infantry. And then at the point where my opponent still had 4 drops left, I decided to drop everything and go for first. So that was the point where I believe he dropped his Toruk great weapon block in the middle of the board. And I was like, well, if I can charge it with one of my Knights of the Sun Griffin units, I can do quite some damage to it. He will probably pull out the grind there, but then if I have more Knights of the Sun Griffin units left over, I'm going to be fine, because if it's whittled down, then I will be able to take it. And I was seeing an opportunity for my cavalry to go over the flanks. So basically we have kind of similar movement. I don't really want to give my opponent a chance to take the initiative, to get a charge, and well, get lucky with the charge, basically. So I was already looking a bit earlier at maybe trying to go over the flanks just with my cavalry, just to push it through, basically, and try to dominate there. What you see on the picture for me, I'll just quickly introduce. On my side, I have my State Militia on the left, then the Knights of the Sun Griffin with Discipline, Knights of the Sun Griffin with Discipline, Heavy Infantry, then the Knights of the Sun Griffin with the Flaming Standard, which is going to be not that useful this game. The Arcane Engine in the water, and then on the right we have Heavy Infantry and the Electoral Cavalry with all the characters. My opponent left to right, so out of sight on this picture, next to the building on the left side is his unit of 4 Toruk with paired weapons. Then he has the Citadel Guard with pistols, shooting weapons. Then he has some Vassal Levies, the Toruk with the great weapons, and also the BSB. For Kadims, then he has the Wizard behind on the small bull, I believe. Lamassu is all the way in the back behind the Wizard. Then close to the hill we have the Vassal Levies and we have the Kadim Titan facing off against my cavalry, basically. So I was thinking, like, well, there's Kadim Titan, he can come in, he can wreak havoc on my cavalry, and then, well, I will be able to just grind them down. That's not going to be a problem. So as soon as he put down his great weapon, Kadims, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to go over the flank, try to outmaneuver my opponent, that he has to turn towards me. If he wants to turn towards me, then I'm going to have Knights of the Sun Griffin that can apply pressure from the front. And that was my my entire game plan. Because I was quite confident that on their own with, well, not on their own, because with heavy infantry support, the Electoral Cavalry would be able to just pull through, yeah, and just basically make me take the day. So, well, this was the situation after my turn 1. Then we go to the next picture, which is the situation after my opponent's turn 2, I think. So we had a turn of his where he didn't really do a lot. No, he just backed up and he chaffed me with his Vassal Levies. Then I went in, then I destroyed the Vassal Levies, and then he charged into my cavalry with the Kadim Titan and also with the Kadim Incarnate. But I had a counter charge ready. He also charged in, by the way, with the model on the Bull of Shamut. I think that was a bit of a mistake because I still have my Locket of Sana in the unit. And otherwise he could just contact one model, so I don't think it would have brought a lot to the combat. Anyway, he does get into my knights, and I have a counter charge with my heavy infantry. I was quite happy in this matchup with the Mantle of Ulor because this took away the +1 agility bonus for my opponent of the devastating charge. So my opponent's Kadim incarnates in this situation are at agility 3. The Walking Inferno guy is at agility 3 or 2, doesn't really matter. But the upside was that my Knight Commander gets this wing first, my BSB gets this wing, my Prelate gets this wing, and also my heavy infantry support unit that had charged the Kadims in the flank also gets this wing. I got some spells off. In the end, it meant that the Kadim incarnates were all gone before even one of them could strike. So that was 12 wounds for me, 12 combat rests, which was great. Because then the Kadim Titan, he could only do limited damage. He did get a Toxic Breath attack because it was either that or some other spell that I didn't really like. I don't remember which one it was. But I should have probably dispelled this one. And what I was not aware of is that he also gets a reroll to wound on the Toxic Breath attack because apparently his breath attack also becomes flaming and magical. And toxic at the same time. And I had an incendiary marker on my knights, so in the end I did lose something like 7 or 8 knights to the Kadim. He lost combat by 4 or 5 because of the wounds on the incarnate, but he managed to make the check, and then we went over to the next turn. As you can see, my opponent is also a bit trying to angle towards my cavalry because he's realizing the threat from there. And the Kadim, I don't know, no, they're not Kadim, Taruk, the Taruk guys that were close to the building, they are trying to get closer to my lines. Because obviously my opponent is also breakthrough playing and trying to break through my lines. However, at this stage, I am quite confident about the matchup. I can still get out of the way with my cavalry from these great weapon guys, and it's going to be fine, it seems. And then on the next picture, so my cavalry still is up on top at the top side. It has been grind down a bit, mostly by the Kadim. So there's mostly the characters left with like 4 rank and file or something. And then otherwise we have the Knights of the Sun Griffin that are taking a bit more an aggressive stance. My opponent, his great weapon unit is facing to the right, so I can go to the left out of line of sight and apply a bit more pressure there. My opponent could try to charge into my Knights of the Sun Griffin. I wouldn't really want him to make it this turn, however I'm going to be steadfast as he's only be 2 wide. And being 2 wide, I don't think he has enough offensive output to really go through the units. So this is how I rearranged my lines. Then we go to the last picture I have. So my opponent, he was just backing up all the time with this great weapon guys, and I actually don't really know why. Because that was his shot basically at taking this battle, in my opinion. In the end, well, this is what I have left. So I do still have my Prelate, I do still have my Wizard, I still have my Knight Commander all the way on top with a scoring support unit of heavy infantry. So that is my single unit that I managed to break through on the table. And meanwhile, yeah, my BSB is also still, oh yeah, it's in the middle of the field. So meanwhile, I do manage to basically chaff up my opponent and give him a support unit. And then in my final turn, I managed to rally my Knights of the Sun Griffin that were below half. I don't know what the other Knights of the Sun Griffin are doing here, but basically at the end of the battle, I believe my opponent had 1 unit of Knights of the Sun Griffin, another half a unit, and the cavalry, and I had nearly his entire army. So it ended up to be a 19-1. I must say the details of this, there was in the last couple of turns there was a lot going on with his BSB going into my Knights of the Sun Griffin, his Wizard going in, me being able to hold on a Discipline 8 at some point, And that was a really risky one because if I held, I had like a rear charge onto his wizard. With heavy infantry, flank charge on his BSB with Knights of the Sun Griffin. And basically that carried the day for me. Yeah, generally, play-wise, it was an interesting battle. But I would like to ask Team Switzerland to consider what players they bring to the event in terms of playing speed. So the next battle was against Team Spain, who eventually won the event. This was against Kyle with his beast herds. I only managed to take one picture of this this matchup, unfortunately, and that is the one with deployment. So yeah, you just saw the list. It's quite an aggressive beast herds list, and this was the deployment. He has first turn. From his left to right, he has centaurs. He has a beast, razor tusk herd, I believe. He has mongrel herd to the right side of the building. Then he has some dogs, if I'm right. No, I have no clue what that is. He has some dogs, anyway. Then he has another. Oh, he has a Gortag. Then he has his two characters, the other Gortag. Mongrel herd below his arm there, basically. More hounds, and then a Jabberwock all the way on the right. Me left to right, Knights of the Sun Griffin 6 white, Knights of the Sun Griffin Flaming Standard, Heavy Infantry, Arcane Engine, Electoral Cavalry with the characters, Heavy Infantry, and the Knights of the Sun Griffin with Banner of Discipline. I did sneak in my State Militia all the way on the right in the corner. We were playing marching columns. That was my first drop, going from right to left. And I thought they would not be that influential in this battle anyway. So, what happened in this battle, just to describe it by words, because I don't have any pictures. So he just fully blocked me up. He was still gonna have two ambushing units of wild ones. So I was looking at this and I was like, oh, I should have deployed differently. I should have probably gone more back to deny him the option of blocking me as much as he did with the Warhounds. He did an amazing job, by the way, at playing his army. I think he's a really good player. But matchup wise, I think he was quite confident. I had it as a neutral, because basically he has to go in, he has to try and break me, and if he doesn't, then I'm gonna grind him out. These centaurs, he has 14 centaurs with great weapons. So I counter deployed on the left with my wide unit of Knights of the Sun Griffin to make him go less wide. That was quite effective. So he went less wide is basically what I'm trying to say. But Knights of the Sun Griffin against Centaurs, I'm gonna win the grind because it's gonna be one turn of hurt, but otherwise I will strike first 2 times. So that is quite rough on him. He is gonna have to rely on terror checks to make stuff happen. So the combination of the Jabberwock with some other terror causing charges, he might delete one of my or both of my Knights of the Sun Griffin units, and basically that is also more or less what happened. And the Electoral Cavalry, he really has to pour in all his resources to make it happen. So in order of events, so he tried to just fully block me up, and then in my turn I had a charge in the flank of some Warhounds with my heavy infantry, which I took, and the hounds that he was meddling with right now, they were in front of the other heavy infantry, but I really wanted to make sure that I had them available for a countercharge sometime. So instead, I decided to use my Dragon Staff to try and cause a panic test on them. And then in combination with the State Militia on the right that are off screen, I could ensure a panic test. So once again, he blocked me up. What I did was to go back with the Knights of Sun Griffin on the right so that I would be out of line of sight of the staff that was on the other side of the hill, because that was quite scary. I rearranged my knights so that I was 5 white and could actually use my dragon staff on the hounds, and otherwise I just shuffled up my lines a little bit. And then, well, one mistake I made here was that in the magic phase I allowed him to get the plus D3 movement on his Gortag. And his Gortag, he was next to the raiding, no, not the raiding chariot, but the Razor Tusk chariot, so for +1 advance, so it goes to advance 8, because it normally has 7, I believe, plus the D3, and then, well, normally if it's in a wood, it also gets an extra +1, and then Cal was saying, like, yeah, if you really have all the bonuses stacked, you have like advance 10 plus D3, so you can charge anywhere on the board. Yeah, so that is what I did. I rearranged. I used my dragon staff, and then my opponent has a discipline 5 check on the hounds, which he unfortunately passed. But no big deal. The only downside was that my heavy infantry was blocked from the counter charge. And then my opponent charged his Gortag into my heavy infantry in the middle of the board that I used to get rid of his hounds. That was his other unit of hounds. And I flat that one, leading to a panic check which I passed. Then he redirected into the Knights of the Sun Griffin with the Flaming Standard in the middle with his Gortag, and I failed a terror check, so I lost that unit. So that was a bit unfortunate. I was not too happy about that. But it meant that the Gortag was going to have a failed charge, and the failed charge was such that I could actually charge the Gortag in my turn on a 6 with my Arcane Engine. And then he blocked my knights with dogs. I had an overrun from the dogs into the Gortag. So I was thinking, well, this is actually quite great because he has, well, obviously I didn't really want to lose my unit. But it was a charge on like an 11 or 12 without Swift Stride. So that was, I think I would just have held. Because even if he does some damage, I can try to do something there against a single Gortag. But then again, I had a charge on a 6 with my Arcane Engine, and I failed my charge onto the Gortag with the Arcane Engine, which meant that once I overran with my Electoral Cavalry, and I ended up in the Gortag, we didn't really do that combat in this turn anymore. So that was a bit unfortunate, and then in his turn we ended up being in this situation. So this, so I drew it out just to have a bit of clarity. So my cavalry was up against the Gortag. I was charging, and my opponent countercharged with the BSB and his wizard on the chariot in the flank, his centaurs in the flank of the cavalry, the wild horns in the other flank of my cavalry, upon which I could declare a countercharge with my heavy infantry into the rear of the wild horns. At this moment I had a 5 of Aegis on my cavalry, and this is basically the moment where the battle went 20-0 to my opponent. Because he just annihilated enough of my cavalry to win the combat by 8. And I had minimized discipline on my cavalry, but that didn't really matter with a -8 on my roll. So afterwards I was calculating just to see what I could expect. Obviously, it's a very fortunate situation for my opponent to be in, because the centaurs, they really want to get into the cavalry and deal some damage. However, I was still within range of my Arcane Engine because, well, it did a failed charge and then it just barely, it went towards the Gortag sufficiently for me to still be within 6 inches of my cavalry. So I did have distracting for all the attacks that my opponent was going to do. And I had 5 of Aegis, so the Beast Herd models, they all, if I'm correct, need a 5 up to hit. And I did have the Locket of Sana, obviously, to duel out one of his characters and negate the damage over there. So I was looking at that and I was going like, oh, with minimized discipline, I should be able to just grind this out, basically. That might seem a stretch, but then I calculated it afterwards. And well, the impact hits of the chariots are gonna do some wounds, the Gortak is gonna do some wounds, the centaurs are gonna do a big chunk of wounds. And after Aegis, I reduced that to like 8 to 9 wounds. My Knight Commander, he rolled to hit on the Gortak, he hit 3 times, and he wounded on a 3+, and he didn't do a single wound. I still remember that one. And then the rest of the unit also didn't do any wounds, whilst I was expecting to do like 4 wounds to the Gortak at least. I didn't do any wounds to the centaurs. I didn't do any wounds to the wilder ones. In the end, I lost combat by, well, 8, so I couldn't do anything. But based on my estimations, wound-wise, we should be, or at least more or less equal. So give the swing off of like 2. And as long as my opponent doesn't kill 9 cavalry, am I right? No. I believe he had to kill more than 9 cavalry. I don't remember. But there is some point at which the wild horns are going to drop out of combat, and that would be negative to me, because then my opponent still has a big flank with the centaurs. But I would still gain a banner, a rear, a big rear, and 2 ranks from my heavy infantry. So static combat res-wise, if we don't do a lot of wounds, I actually win this combat. So it was quite unfortunate to see that I lost this combat by quite a margin. So yeah, it's an interesting situation. I'm just gonna go back to the original picture of the battle. I think it's a matchup that my opponent can definitely win under the right circumstances, but I don't think it's as green as he thought it would be. He was arguing like, well, I can either give extra resilience to my Gortar, or I can I don't remember exactly anymore what he was regen or stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, that's fine actually. I mean, the knights, they wound you on a 6-up anyway. I'm just gonna try to grind you down, and you might also be trying to grind me down, but I still have flaming attacks. I still have reroll to wound that I rely on more than on just high strength. It's just the Knight Commander who is strength 7, and the Gortak is resilience 6, I believe. So if you go to resilience 9, it's just the Knight Commander that doesn't wound you on a 3+ anymore, but wounds you on a 6 only. So that's going to make a difference of 1 wound, I think. Maybe. Or maybe 2 wounds. But I would say this is still quite an okay matchup for me. But I do like the advice of Kyle to put a binding scroll in the army. And well, right now for the ETC, I was expecting a lot of Sylvan Elves, and I was expecting to have to face them 1 round probably. That is why I chose the setup for my BSB with Supernatural Dexterity, Mantle of Villar, and Dragonstone. But you could remove these items, give him a great weapon, and then just play a binding scroll. And then the other point that he raised about the list is chaff. Well, once again, even in this matchup, I saw that 1 single Terror test is more dangerous to the Knight of the Sun Griffin than anything else. Even at Discipline 9 with a reroll. So including chaff that can cause a panic check. That's not what this army relies on, in my view. So I think my opponent didn't really see what was happening with cavalry. I think he thought, well, he just got everything after he charged in with the centaurs and the Gortar. But I think I could have pulled through had I. There was some other stuff going on the table where I didn't have that many counter charges available. But yeah, in this grind with the cavalry, the damage output of my opponent is gonna go drastically lower because he doesn't get his extra AP on the charge from his centaurs anymore. He can only strike corner to corner practically with his centaur, so he loses a lot of attacks there. And the Gortak is normally also gonna die after 2 rounds of combat. So Anyway, I would really appreciate doing a rematch of this battle, and I think you will be surprised, Carl. But yeah, that's going to be the battle report for this time. So first round 19-1 to me, second round 20-0 to my opponent. So the second day I ended on an average of 9.5 points. And in total, after the second day, I had 59 points, which was quite decent. So my goal was to score at least 60 points, and I was only 1 point away after the second day. Yeah, with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.